Dude, I'm glad this time. Remember last time you came and we were just like all both hopped up on like caffeine and just like, dude, did we get it?
I was like sweating.
Yeah.
Sweating so
We were
hard.
like, yeah, but free will, dude. I don't fucking. But what if, you know? But what if? Yeah, we were just like neurotic. It was like, actually, that same thing happened with Jackson Crutchfield when he came on.
Oh, really?
And where we were both just like on nicotine, and it felt like very separate.
True.
But then like, I don't know, going back, I enjoyed both of them. I actually really enjoyed your episode, which is why I was excited for you to come on.
It was fun to do, but I just felt crazy afterwards.
Oh, for sure.
I was like, I feel like I said so much and didn't say anything.
Yeah, I didn't say anything at all. Have you gone back and listened to it at all?
I listened to it after
When it first came
Yeah, and
out.
I was like, this definitely came together a little bit better than I realized.
Yeah, same. I have come back to that like 2 or 3 times since then, just because it's a fun. I mean, this is the thing about philosophy that like I've come to realize is just like I got super into spirituality, and then I was like, all right, but the next step is like philosophy, I guess. I don't know. I started like looking into like subconscious and the idea of that, all that shit, and I realized like, oh, none of this is worth thinking about. Like you're literally like overthinking everything, and it's not affecting your day to day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's fun to, and I think maybe it does help process a little bit.
I think the thing that's interesting about philosophy is like you can come to all these conclusions. I feel like every time I think about philosophy, or for me not so much spirituality, but anytime I think about like philosophy, I hit this like super zero, like zoomed out mode, and I like have all these realizations, and then as soon as I'm done, I'm like, all right, well now I have to go like to the store.
Yeah. You have to like come back
Yeah.
to reality
And it just
after you like experience nirvana or whatever. You're like, yeah, I got the pinnacle of life. I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now I'm gonna go to the store,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna go work out. I guess I don't get sweaty. That's what people do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. But I think we could start. It's probably a good place to
I
start.
think it's a good place to start. I feel
But yeah, ladies and gents, welcome back to Articulate. This week we got one Mr. Josh Kleckner back, dude.
What's
Very
up?
excited. What's up? Look right into this camera. But yeah, dude, I'm excited because I mean, it's kind of like what we were just talking about, like with philosophy. Well, that is kind of my first question. Is like, do you think, you know, like talking about human consciousness and philosophizing, do you think it's like worth it? You know what I mean? Because like you said, like you said, you just experience these like nirvanas, and then you're like, oh, I guess like I have to go take a shit and wipe my ass.
Yeah.
Like an animal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you have to do it. I think you just have to do it enough that it kind of gets in your bones a little bit.
Oh.
Like, I kind of like retroactively realized some things about my like worldview and personal philosophies that I'm like, oh, I'm kind of doing this in my everyday life, and then I had to kind of like backtrack and be like, why do I do this? And I realized like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you kind
totally.
of you can kind of like retroactively realize what your worldview is based on your behavior if you just kind of pay attention to it.
Yeah.
You gotta let the little animalistic you go out there in the world and like interact with people and do something and say, well, what's up with that? Why'd you do that? You know?
Yeah, in a similar way. I mean, obviously, we can always relate things to comedy or whatever, but like in a similar way, it's like you have these bits that you're like memorizing and thinking about and working out, and then when you go up and actually do it, you're just doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you just go up. Yeah. I feel that. But yeah, I mean, so that's kind of like the reason that I wanted to do this with you is because like I had like a disassociative experience a couple weeks ago.
Talk to me about. First of all, talk to me about what dissociation means, because I'm like, I feel like I've had so many experiences where I'm like, I feel like I'm dissociating, but I'm like, maybe I don't really know what dissociation actually means.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh, I've got ADHD, like I'm
Right.
autistic, I have all these things, but I'm like, I don't really actually know.
Yeah, no, totally. And that's like what because like I was trying to figure out what I experienced. Like at first I was like, is that dissociate? Like this,
Yeah.
But it was also induced by psychedelics. So I'm like, it could be ego death too. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Have you
true.
ever heard of that? And it's like, how are they related? How are they different? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So disassociate, this is what I got. We got notes, bro.
Nice.
So disassociation is the feeling of being like disconnected from yourself and the world. Like literally being detached from your body and like the world around you. So almost like seeing it from like another perspective. You know what I mean? Like kind of coming out of yourself a little bit. Now there is a different thing that's kind of like depersonalization, which is once you go down this rabbit hole,
Yeah,
dude, you
yeah,
go down
yeah,
this
yeah.
fucking. But so disassociation can be like during. It's funny they actually listed like it can be a good thing too. Like it can be during activities that you like. So like if you get caught in a good book, you technically
It's just like getting in the zone.
yeah, and that's flow. And I'm like, yeah, so like I guess flow is a version of disassociation. That's basically what I read.
Okay.
Now, but I think disassociation has a more negative connotation of
Yeah,
course.
I was gonna say if
fun.
that's the case, I'm like never associated.
You're always vibing. Dude.
Oh, yeah, I'm
Just
vibing
like,
all the time.
Vibing is disassociation. But for some people, it is like a negative thing. So it's like a coping mechanism
Yeah.
as well. Like if you're experiencing trauma, to really like, as a defense mechanism and help you cope with what you're going through. Sometimes it is helpful for people to step back out
Yeah.
of their body so that they don't actually have to experience it,
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, depersonalization is, it doesn't feel, depersonalization is different in that you don't feel that you're in your own body. So say dissociation is kind of taking a step back from your body. Depersonalization is like not feeling familiar with your body, if that makes sense. Like everything feels like kind of like, is this me type of thing?
Oh, sure. But okay. So, but how much? So, when you're having that experience, do you know that you're having it, or are you like fully unaware? You know what I mean? Because like
Yeah.
sometimes you'll have a thing you're like, oh, dude, there's a weird thing happening to me right
Yeah,
now.
right.
But it's not the same as like someone that has like some kind of like mental break, and they're just like literally don't know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there is like a certain sense of self-awareness to it as well. So I think what I was reading is that a lot of people experience disassociation without even knowing it. Like you said, like
Yeah.
I experience it every day, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think there are.
I like that impression of me, by the way.
I'm Josh fucking Kleckner, dude. My tummy hurts from pussy, dude. Fucking, all right. That's too much. No, but it like I think there's a certain self-awareness to it. So what I'm thinking, and this is since I had this experience, which I'll get into, but since I had this experience, I'm like, okay, when it happened, I didn't know. Like, I didn't understand what was happening. I couldn't, like, cope with it.
Yeah.
But I think if it were to happen again, would I be able to recognize, now that I've kind of, like, dived into it a little bit
Yeah.
and, like, thought about it? Like, if it were to happen again, would I have a little bit more, like, even if I took a step outside of my body, would I be like, oh, I've done this before? Like, okay, so I remember how I had to, like, kind of navigate this experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that I have this experience to varying degrees a lot.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I've got mental health problems and stuff like that, but like I think that there's sometimes I don't know how to describe it. I'm just like I just get up. Sometimes I'll be in like a funk, like at work or something like that. Like when you're like, especially like if you're like at work and you have something in your life that's like fucking you up.
Yeah.
And you can't take the time to sit and deal with it, but you also have to, your body has to continue doing a thing.
Right. Yeah.
I do that a lot.
Wow.
Because I have like vicious mood swings.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think from this experience, like this process of taking a step back and trying to process things while you're doing other things?
Yeah, well, I think I'm just like depressed and anxious. So
Right.
so someone
classic Kleckner.
someone looks at me wrong and I'm like, oh my god, I'm fucking kill myself.
Yeah.
but I'm also like, need to make people coffee.
Yeah.
So I'm like I'm up here but my body is just going about the day.
Right.
And I'm not there. You know what I mean? I'm not there. I'm not
Yeah. Well, and that's what they were saying is like this can often happen when you're in situations where you're just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
It's like this isn't any different than anything I've experienced before, so it's easy for you to kind of like take a step back because like we said, even with flow, you know what I mean, is like it just becomes natural and in the moment, whereas like your mind can operate on like autopilot, so it can think about other things.
You ever have that experience with comedy?
With comedy, I think that's the goal. You know what I mean? But I don't know if I have it all the time.
Has it ever happened in like a negative way with comedy though?
I think that's honestly like how I started comedy, where I would like go up.
Oh, true, yeah.
Yeah, because I would get like really nervous, and then when I feel like I literally didn't want to experience what it felt like to be up on stage. So like blackout, like I never saw who was in the crowd or anything. I'm like don't know what I said up there. You know what I mean? Like I know I probably hit the points or whatever.
I had that happen to me a lot whenever I first started as well, but I had a different version literally on Tuesday.
Yeah,
because I just had there's a big confluence of life events happening to me, and I was like talking to Anna outside Orleans about it.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, dude, I'm fucking. Right before we went, I was like, I might start hyperventilating right now. I'm about to have like a panic attack.
Oh shit.
And I walked in, and Brian Chesky was like, yo, can you introduce the show? So I walked, so I'm like freaking out. I walk in, and I'm like, all right, welcome to Orleans, everybody. We're gonna get the show started.
Whoa.
And then I did my set right after that, and Anna was like, that was psychotic.
Was it a good set?
It was okay.
It was all right.
but I remember just like I've never like had this disconnect of like I'm having a full meltdown in my brain, but my body's just like presenting this whole other
persona.
Yeah.
Basically.
Because I can do it like I said, like with work where you're making coffee or whatever, but like where you're actually like speaking to people and like doing your thing, you know?
Yeah. It's completely different. You're
It's
the
so
center
weird.
of attention at that point. You know what
Exactly.
I mean?
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, I'm having a mental breakdown and the center of attention.
There's a literal spotlight
comedian's
on
wet
you.
dream, dude. That's crazy.
That's nuts.
Yeah, no. So I mean, within comedy, I think. I mean, again, varying degrees of it. But no, I've never had a panic attack and then went up on stage. Usually, it's afterwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
sure,
usually
sure.
when it comes around. But sounds like you handled it. You know what I mean? It sounds like you.
Consummate professional.
Yeah.
You need me third on the open mic, I'll be there.
I won't like be there. You know
I
what I
won't
mean?
be there, but like
I'll be there. But yeah, so like kind of relating this, so I feel like disassociation and depersonalization are more so like the negative connotated versions
yes.
of maybe what ego death kind of is as well. So I did a little research on ego death, Igor death. I don't fucking, I'm just kidding. No, but so ego death. So first of all, let's define ego. Ego is a sense of self. You probably have thought about the ego quite a bit, being Josh Kleckner,
yes, of course.
Okay, cool. It's basically the default mode network. So basically, there's the superego, the ego, and then the id. You know what I mean? Id, is that what it is?
I think so.
I think id is a better way to pronounce. Who fucking? All right.
Freud.
Fuck Freud,
blame
bro.
Freud.
Yeah, I will. Right? Yeah, I think Jung was also like a person that talked about these things too.
Yes.
But what's interesting is when I was like researching this is that like I had always thought ego was like the part of you that just was like fully like the guy that you want to be, or like the thing that you think you are. You know what I mean? Like the person that's like all kind of confidence and aggression and like all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But technically that's more so the super ego, and the ego is like the balancing act between the subconscious and the super ego.
So the ego is like what's presented to people around you, and the super ego is like the thing in the background that's like
it's super ego is like basically who you are based on society's view of you, everything external.
Oh, okay.
That view of you. So ego is that balance between the two, which is interesting because I think a lot of people want to like induce ego death or something like that, when in reality, I feel like you got to work with your ego.
Honestly,
you know?
I think that teenagers just think that the idea of something called ego death is sick. So
Yeah.
they're like, I kind of
that's fair. I was thinking about this. You ever talk about acid when you were in like high school, and people were like, "Yeah, but you might get acid flashbacks, dude." You know?
Oh yeah, dude. I was so scared of acid as a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah. But what kind of like when I was a kid and like thinking about doing it, I talked to like an older guy, and I was like, "Yeah, like have you ever?" He's just like, "Oh, dude, I've never experienced. I've been doing acid like a decent amount. I've never experienced like a flashback or anything like that." And then, like, looking back, I'm like, oh, that guy was 19, and I was 16 at the time.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, this older guy's got all this experience. He's never had a flashback. He's like, bro, like, he's not that much older than you.
When did you do acid for the first time?
For the first time, it was a terrible experience, but it was, I had a bad one. It was my freshman year of college, because I was like, oh, I'm in college now. I got to try all the things, you know what I mean? But I wasn't comfortable with, like, anybody around me, and, like, didn't know anybody, and they were like all had their own sense of humor and everything, and it was just a scary. Like,
that's such an asset thought. Everyone has their own sense of humor, but me, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm really glad I didn't do acid until I was like 24 or something
really?
like that. Yeah.
Okay, probably for the best.
It's so much better, I think, because it was just like I just felt way more self-assured, and I feel like people go into psychedelics looking for like new like revelations about like they're trying to come out with new information a lot.
Right.
My experience with psychedelics, having done them in my like, more closer to my mid-20s going into my late 20s, is that it's much more just affirming of what I already think.
Oh, very nice.
It helps me just kind of like articulate something to myself that I already think, and I'm like, oh, brother, you're on the right track, dude. You know exactly what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And it's so much better than being like, oh my God, everything is fucked up. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like that's the experience I saw all my friends in college having that I don't have when I take them now, you know?
Yeah, no, that's fair, because you really don't know who you are in college, and you're still figuring out a lot of your identity. And I think that's another part of why I was like having a bad trip, because like I felt like you said, we go into like when you're young, you go into doing a psychedelic for like, oh, the experience. What am I going to find out about myself? And like this whole thing. And then you focus on just solely the acid, and like fully like it just overruns your brain.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, at least this far, so I took like a long break after that. But
Yeah.
kind of like coming back to it, I've realized it's like, no, the acid isn't like the show. It's not like the experience. It's just like it's what you're like on acid and like what you do
Yeah.
with acid. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, like what you're experiencing. So, like, you don't. I don't know. In my opinion, I don't think you should just like. I don't know. Unless you're really trying to do like the heroes those thing where you like go in your bed and like
Yeah,
fully
yeah,
like
yeah.
immerse yourself in it or whatever. I don't think you should like take acid with a buddy and then sit on a couch for 12 hours. You know what I mean?
Oh no, I'm a big believer in going outside.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like exploring, like
Yeah.
doing activities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like if your mind is idle while you're tripping acid, you're just gonna think thoughts that are like, "Oh, I'm on acid."
Yeah, yeah,
And it's just
yeah.
gonna become like a spiral. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what was our default is that? Oh yeah. What's interesting about the ego is that they call it like the default mode, which I had recently heard like David Foster Wallace. He did like one of those college speeches or whatever,
Sure.
and he was talking about how our default mode is that we are just the center of the universe and everything is happening around us. And I think that's true.
I think that's pretty true, but it's also I think that sounds less fair or that sounds worse than it is, I think.
Mm,
I think it's so fair to like view yourself as the center of the universe because you're literally looking out through your own eyes all the time.
that's true.
You know what I mean? I feel like you can say that in the abstract and be like, oh, dude, you don't think about other people as much as yourself. But it's like literally everything that you're looking at is influencing you at the time in some way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like impossible. I think that's the kind of thing that we were talking about, I think probably before we started recording about, or maybe during, I don't know, but about whether it's worth to think about philosophy or not.
Right.
Like, because you can think about your like worldview and how you think you relate to other people around you, and like you can think about like sociological ideas that relate to all these other people. But at the end of the day, like everything that you deal with affects you.
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
impossible task to
Which
not
is-
think about yourself all the time.
Yeah, that's very true. So, but that's why it's the default. I
Yeah,
think. You
yeah,
know what
yeah,
I mean?
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think you have to constantly work against that. I don't know if you should, but I obviously you don't have to. But I think it's good, like in good practice, to try to put yourself outside of that sometimes.
I think, well, sometimes for sure.
Yeah.
I think the way that I try to view my the most general moral philosophy that I have
Yeah.
is that I think that your goal in life should be to maximize the amount of joy and happiness in the world and minimize the amount of suffering.
Okay.
And every single person, including yourself, is an equal actor, and you weight it all equally. So your suffering is equal to anyone else's suffering, and your
Right.
happiness, joy is equal to anyone else. So in your day-to-day life, that's going to be very you-centered because you see yourself more than anyone else.
That's true.
But any single time someone else is in the room, like you gotta be, they're on equal footing with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally.
That's kind of how I think that's the balance.
Yeah, because so when you're with other people, make sure that you level yourself as like the other person. You
Exactly.
know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's fair. Well, so like with ego death, this is kind of coming back to that. Basically, is like what I learned through like my spiritual journey or whatever. Is
Yeah.
that basically at least Alan Watts has a philosophy that really helped me. I think.
Yeah.
Where basically it was like you meditate on the fact that it first kind of started with like the idea that you as a consciousness, you sit in this one place, but there are birds outside and there are people outside. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So they're not interacting with you, but they all have that same perspective generally that you have. You know what I mean? There is a perspective that they're seeing through that is, not directed towards you, but you come in and out of that.
Sure.
You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean? And then he kind of broke it down and elaborated it as like, so if you really think about it, we're all made of just like vibrating particles, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
vibrating atoms or whatever. So everything kind of has a perspective. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
everything, like this cup sees this way. You know what I mean? And like,
It's true.
yeah,
But seeing only has meaning to.
beings with consciousness.
Yeah.
So this is what I wanted to get down to.
Man.
We're finally freaking breaking it down to. Because basically, so I had this disassociated experience. I actually had I feel like I had experienced ego death back in the day when I was going through that spiritual journey.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I had this other experience that I'm comparing it to now.
Okay.
But basically, I had been experimenting with microdosing. And generally really fun. Not even fun. You just don't really feel it, but it's just you feel a little loose
yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever.
sure.
And one day though I did it and I didn't do anything. I laid in bed and just watched TV for, the first half of it or
Nice.
whatever. Yeah, and like, I mean, usually I wouldn't feel bad about that, but I had kind of like slipped my mind that I was even microdosing, you know what I mean? And just like really wasn't experiencing anything through it. And then I walked out the door like to go work out because I just felt like I needed to get out or whatever. And I just was like, whoa, like, who am I? Like, what is this? And I'm like, it was a very like third person perspective of like a being that I just felt like I tapped into into this person's consciousness.
Explain more about you're like, what am I? What do you mean by that exactly?
Yeah, like everything felt like unfamiliar. Like I didn't recognize like the actions that I was doing. Like it was just kind of happening. So I knew I was going to work out and I was like, okay, so this being likes to work out, I guess. You know what I mean? Like this
So
vessel.
you were like unfamiliar with like even your likes. You were unfamiliar with your own personality.
Yeah, totally. Like, yeah. It was very strange. And then, like, I got in the car to drive, and a song came on. I just naturally put on music when I get in the car, and I was like, oh, I guess this person likes this song. You know what I mean? I was like, kind of getting into it a little bit,
Yeah.
And then in that same sense, I like had a nicotine vape, and I was like, oh, this person nicotine vapes, gross. You know what I mean?
But that's actually. Did you really have that thought?
Yeah.
That's so interesting because that's like the other perspective that you had
has an opinion.
Has an opinion about the other guy.
Right. Yeah.
I actually have that a lot too.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah. In what way?
I think that I am like all bodily impulses. Like I have terrible impulse control.
Yeah.
Like I just want to get food delivered. I want nicotine. Like
Yeah.
I want all these like basic human stuff. And I just kind of watch myself like, damn, I wish I could do something to control this guy. Like he's got no fucking control at all.
Yeah.
But I think it is just like that's just the difference between the body pulling you and the guy up there that's saying like that's kind of watching it all happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the guy up there would prefer I don't eat.
Right.
But I have a belly. I'm hungry.
So what is the guy up there?
I think the guy up there is you.
Right. It's you, but but it's not though. You know what I mean?
I think it's the guy. I think that humans are like a very specific level of smart.
Okay.
Where it's like we're smart enough to observe our physical bodies doing stuff and needing stuff and wanting stuff.
Yeah.
But not smart enough to overcome it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So I think there's like part of you that just sees you making dumb decisions,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not able to stop your body from making you do it.
Right, because of natural impulses, basically. Yeah, which is kind of fucked up. Like I feel like we should be able to we should be able to do that because we have that view, but it doesn't like make us act. You know what I mean? It's not an actor. It's like it's just like a perspective. So basically, what led me to wanting to have this podcast in general with you, especially, was like I didn't think like it happened, and then I went to work out, and I finally like felt kind of in my body again and like normal.
Yeah.
And then I just like tried not to think about it for a while.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I got a little high one night, and I just had like a walk back, and I was like, maybe I should try to process this, like what I actually experienced. And in that, I was like, okay, it was in that sense where it's like, what was that third person perspective that I was going to? Was that like a different layer of consciousness? You know what I mean? Like what you think that was like just like a different wavelength of what that is?
I don't know. I can't give you a for sure answer. My closest thing is, so I think it's interesting because you mentioned the nicotine thing, and that I can kind of easily write off for myself as like the body has chemical impulses and controls. But I think it can get emotional too. Like when you watch your emotional reactions to things and they don't exactly make sense.
Yeah.
That's when I think it's hard. An easy example that I can think of is like I think the idea of monogamy on an intellectual level, like the guy up here is like, oh dude, like sex is sex, it's whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have a partner, you love them. It's cool if they like you can understand that they still love you, but maybe they have like some human instinct to have sex with someone else.
Right.
But then when it happens, you're like
the emotion.
You have this emotional response where you're like, I'm gonna die. This is so bad.
Yeah.
That to me is so different because it's like, what is that?
What is that emotional response?
What is the emotion?
Is that part of consciousness? Or is that part of our animalistic tendencies that's rising up into the consciousness?
Well, I think those are the same. Well, are they the same?
Well, I don't think so.
Well, I think I don't know, because I don't believe in like a soul, right?
Okay.
So to me, it's all just your brain at the end of the day,
Okay. All right.
and consciousness is just a self-awareness of the brain.
Sure. Okay.
Is my
Consciousness is just a self-awareness of the brain. So
Yeah.
do you not believe in the fact that there is like we all share like a consciousness type of thing?
No,
Not at all?
nah.
Nah.
I think it's like, for me, it's like I think, therefore I am. That's it.
That's it. Wow. Okay. Well then
I think that consciousness is like, I think consciousness feels so crazy to have,
yeah.
but if you zoom out, it's not that special.
It's not that
It's
specific. And why? Why?
Because like consciousness, it's the same thing that we were talking about with like being self-centered.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you feel self-centered because you are in your life all the time.
Yeah.
Same thing with consciousness. It's the whole way you experience everything is through your own brain. So you're like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
but you know what else is nuts? The sun.
Yeah.
But the sun isn't sitting around all day being like, God damn, I'm the sun. That's so
Yeah.
crazy. You know what I mean?
No, you're so right, because that kind of is answers like part of what my next question is basically like, I think, therefore I am, right?
Yeah.
So does that make me more important and or valuable than
Makes you more important to you.
to you? Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is like it's basically like I was like, does this make me more important than the sidewalk? And what my spiritual thing is like, we're all coming from this one perspective, right? Like,
Yeah.
and everything has a perspective, so you're not more important than anything. But because we are able to like love and experience like value, you know.
The other thing is that the idea of important is a very consciousness thought.
right?
The universe doesn't think anything is important.
Yeah, but you don't think that because, yeah, I guess the universe is bigger than consciousness,
Yeah.
right? You think so?
I think that consciousness is just another thing the universe made.
Yeah, but you don't. But I feel like consciousness can affect the universe back. You know what I mean?
How?
How?
Yeah.
By creating like the world that we live in, but also like
I mean-
creating emotions. Like, you don't think emotions are another level of, like, I don't know, like another level of like vibration. You know what I mean? Like another
Yeah, but like
different wavelength. I don't know.
I guess it's like, did consciousness make that, or is that just the same thing as consciousness being made? Like, I feel like that's tied into consciousness already. Like, when consciousness was made, feelings were made, like all those things were made at the same time. It's just like
it was all made at once.
it's just like a way that atoms and molecules came together in the same way that they come together to make planets or water or anything like that. I really think I get what you're saying about the way that it feels,
yeah.
but I really think it's just that like
We want to put that value into it because we're conscious.
because we're conscious and because it's affecting you all the time.
Yeah.
And it's rare, which I think is weird.
It's rare.
Yeah, consciousness is like rare. Like
Oh,
most,
very true. Yeah,
like
yeah.
most things aren't.
Totally. Right.
It's the same thing with like religion and like people being like, well, we don't know about other life, so
Yeah.
we must be important.
Yeah.
Like Earth has to be important. Where else is there life?
Yeah.
Somewhere.
But it could be somewhere.
Yeah.
Or it could also not be anywhere.
Could also not be anywhere.
But in that case, it's also just like, oh, then it was just this one little instance of this thing happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a human thing of being like, this has to mean something. But like the
Yeah.
idea, like what it means for something to mean something.
But don't you feel like connected to people?
Yeah.
So in that sense, is it just because of consciousness? But that's what I'm saying. Isn't there a shared consciousness?
The gross, cynical part of me is like, it's just like evolutionary biology somehow. I mean, I feel connected to people, but it's like,
Do you think it's a generated connection?
I think it's like, yeah, why do I feel that way? I think, well, it's like kind of, I guess, like, why do I feel anything? I you know what I mean? I don't really know. My guess is that it's like some kind of biological thing. There's also this thing that I think, I mean, my whole philosophy, like, create more joy and happiness and minimize more suffering. I also think that those things, like, beget one another. Like, I think part of what's good about being good to people around you is that even if you're not seeking it out, they're good to you in turn. And building positive relationships is like symbiosis, you know what I mean? And like on a chemical level is serotonin, you know what I mean? A loving relationship with someone is just like creating good juices in your brain.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it is self-generated is what you're saying, basically.
What do you mean by self-generated?
Well, it's self-generated in the fact that you, like with your moral philosophy, say you want to put joy and comfort or whatever out into the world. And so when it happens that somebody else has that same philosophy and it comes back to you, then it releases a chemical serotonin or whatever in your brain that makes you like associate that feeling with that person.
Yeah, I do think that. I think that's kind of how. That's my guess.
Right.
I think everything is like more. It's got to be more complicated than that, and we don't understand it. But my inkling is that it has something to do with that.
Right. Well, I want to disagree personally.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Because just because like I think that I want to believe that there is a more connection than just that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like there are like weird phenomenon that I don't have no examples of right now where people like meet and they like automatically connect, without having any shared background or even knowing that they have the same philosophy.
True. I'll say this. I do have some amount of cognitive dissonance because to me, that is just how the world seems to work.
Yeah.
But also there's things like my mom claims that this is true. She says that one day when she was like a teenager or something like that, her brother was like in trouble, lost in the woods, and she had like a weird dream that he was in trouble, and she like called someone and he was in trouble, and they found him, and that was the whole thing. And in my brain, I just have to go like, probably not. I don't know. it just seems like that.
Really. It just seems like that could have happened.
But I'm also like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that that's crazy.
Exactly. Like the phenomenon that happened just like all over the place that point to the fact that maybe there's more than a little bit of
I think I acknowledge that stuff happens that feels weird, but I just don't. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, so you choose to remain ignorant.
Yeah, it's kind of it's just like I get all this stuff. That thing I don't get. I don't know what to do with that. So I'm gonna kind of just.
Well, I think what could potentially like help your argument is like the fact, like the science behind like the dimensions. You know what I mean? So like the fact that scientifically, do you believe that there are other dimensions? Like we live in the third dimension or the fourth dimension, we see three-dimensionally. Because
that's like a string theory idea. There's 11 dimensions, 11 spatial dimensions or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's possible. So my experience studying physics, because I was a physics major.
Oh, okay.
String theory I remember string theory came up once in a seminar, and it was kind of interesting because they said actually that string theory is more philosophy than science.
String theory is more philosophy than science. Interesting.
Because the thing about string theory, at least right now, is it doesn't make meaningful predictions.
Okay.
You can't.
It's like what we were saying with philosophy. It's like you can't really put it into action right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that is kind of a technological barrier at this point. But from what I understand, and I could be wrong, I don't know. It's been a long time since I was in college. But my understanding was that like string theory was like a reworking of the idea of how physics works on a fundamental level, but it didn't make any changes to what would happen in an experiment.
Okay.
But it's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like saying like, what if dogs were cats? And like nothing about them changes, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, there's nothing you can do with it.
Right.
But it's just like an idea.
Yeah. Which comes from consciousness.
Exactly. Tying it all back.
Yeah.
So my thought about the dimensions is maybe, but I think the kind of dimensions that exist in string theory wouldn't really matter for consciousness very much.
Yeah.
Because they're like spatial dimensions. It's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
I can't even get into it. Believe me, I could talk about it.
I could talk about it. I swear I went to school for it.
I promise I know about this.
I have a paper on the wall that says I know this. So I do.
Yeah.
That's crazy because I don't know. I guess I was just like bought into the concept that there were other dimensions because you think about like ants as like two-dimensional creatures, or like, they live in 3D but they see two-dimensionally, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
I know exactly the example you're
where you put them on a globe and they walk forward, and we can see that they're walking on a globe, but they just think they're walking in a straight line the whole time. You know what I mean? So my question is one. I don't know if we were going to buy into this concept, which apparently you're iffy on, but if we're going to buy into this concept, then does that make us more valuable than this ant because it doesn't experience potentially love or, like emotions and shit like that?
I think it definitely feels that way.
Yeah. Well, and in that same sense, does that mean like the thing that I had where I felt like, if there is, a person living in the fifth dimension that sees fourth dimensionally, does that then make them more important or valuable?
I think that's the kind of thing that again ties back to like when we were talking about like the value of thinking philosophically.
Yeah.
I think that in your day-to-day life, you feel more important than the ant.
Right.
But when you zoom out, you say you're not.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But then when for all intents and purposes, when you're living your everyday life,
yeah,
you feel more important than the ant.
You feel more important. But again, nothing else experiences, as far as we know, this perspective besides other humans.
Well, I guess the thing is, whenever you zoom out, you kind of you start asking like, what does it mean to be important?
Right.
And
yeah,
I think
that's a great question.
I think the answer is kind of it's a human made up thing.
Concept to feel important.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're important. Come on. But I want to be important.
I know. But if you like, can you really say like to the zoomed out universal perspective?
Do we actually affect anything?
Well, or even does that even matter?
Yeah.
Blow up the Earth.
Yeah.
Who cares? You know what I mean? Like it doesn't into the fully zoomed out
True,
universal
but here's
perspective.
the thing, though.
Am I a nihilist? I might be.
Maybe, but here's the thing. When you say zoom out,
yeah,
you're only zooming out to the concept of what we can imagine that you zoom out. Because there is an edge to the universe, right?
Maybe. Yeah.
Exactly. We don't know how far are you zooming out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then on that level, or if you zoom out farther than we can imagine, then maybe we do become important again.
I guess I'm still hung up on like what it means to be important, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I guess that's a great question. Like, what does it mean to be important?
This is also the problem with philosophy is like words are so difficult.
Words are tough.
Words are tough, dude. It's like, what does any of this mean?
Yeah. Once you get to that concept, you're like, all right, now I'm going to go to the grocery store, dude.
That was like the one philosophy class I took in college. Everything would come down to like, well, this word doesn't even mean that. And that was like every paper was like, what does this word mean?
No, I took one philosophy class, but it was actually like the math, like logic that I had not even heard of before.
Yeah.
I was like really excited to like learn about like actual philosophies.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, but if A plus B equals C, then what does C even mean? You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? There's like logical fallacies and shit like that.
I think I have a little bit of a bias that I think can help about this.
Okay.
I think in all the conversations around like being important and this and that, there's something that I think about a lot. I think part of my like learning physics and like learning about the like fundamental laws of the universe and like thinking about how we all fit in.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I have built this preconception about like profundity, like things that are profound. Like there's this book. It's a fantasy book. It's kind of nerdy. It's a thing that I like a lot, though. There's this book, and there's this.
What book is it?
It's called by Lev Grossman. It's called The Magicians.
Okay.
It's like adult, sad Harry Potter.
Sure. Yeah, love it.
And there's like there's this one scene where they're like looking at the gods that created the universe. Like they open up a hatch and they can see the gods that made the universe, and they're like changing the wiring of the universe.
Oh, wow.
And they're like building it out.
Yeah.
And they're these like big, boring, like silver golems.
Yeah.
And the one character says something to the effect of like, I assume that like my mortal brain just can't comprehend the importance and magnificence of this being, and that's why they look like this to me. That's why they look so simple.
Yeah.
And the other character's like, no, we actually think that's pretty much it. Like they're like, we have this concept of like inverse profundity. Like the deeper you get to the truth, the less profound it is.
Wow.
And I kind of think that that's true. Like something that affected me a lot was like early in college. We were studying electrons, and there's like this concept of like spin of an electron. It has this angular momentum, right? But they're a singular point, so they can't spin. Like how could a singular infinitesimally small point spin? It doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
And one of the students asked the professor, like, what is the spin of an electron? Like, what is it really? Like, what is that? How can it spin if it's just a point? And he said, spin is a property of an electron. And he's like, yeah, but like, what does it mean? He's like, no, it's just, that's it.
It has no meaning.
It has no meaning.
Just the spin.
It just is
it's
what
a
it is.
word associated with an electron. Basically.
Exactly, yeah. And so that's kind of how I think about like, I think deepest truths are disappointing to humans. Because it's just like, I think at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's because, like, bringing it all back. That's what we were talking about, too. It's like, you can think about all this stuff all you want, but at the end of the day, you got to go take a shit. You got to go to the grocery store. You got to put shit in your mouth, and you got to put it back out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And you got to, like, work and do the whole thing. So I do like that concept as like sad as it is.
It's sad, but I think like internalize, like it's one of those things that's like sad to hear,
Yeah.
but when it gets in your bones, it feels nice.
Really?
Yeah, it's liberating.
Why?
Because you can just like
Let go a little bit?
you can let go a little bit.
Yeah.
Be like, I'm gonna relax and like enjoy the experience that I have available to me.
Right.
Because there's something about this importance that's always reaching. Like you're always reaching. You always want to find that
True.
deeper thing,
The
and it's
deeper level.
and it's not. Sometimes it's not there.
Yeah.
And even if it is there, you can't find it.
Yeah.
But just saying it's not there, being like, oh,
wow. Yeah. Because you're right. That's something I hadn't considered. Is like even if there is a thing that is deeper than us, farther than us, more larger than us, we can't do it.
Yeah.
Like we cannot fathom.
You can't take enough DMT.
Yeah, you cannot take enough DMT to fathom the concept of what else is out there.
Yeah.
Which totally makes sense because, like, I mean, again, within spirituality that I've looked at, it is basically what they have, like, these Buddhist temples, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, people come, they're like, oh, like, I'm so upset. Like, I'm all weird. Can you help me or whatever? They go, please help. I can't. Jesus, fucking, I can't. There's no more.
It's just some silent Buddhist, like,
Yeah, but yeah, the guy's literally chilling there. There's no, I can't. You look like this. But yeah, so then you go there, and basically they give you all these tasks that are like, okay, why don't you do you not have a peace of mind? And they're like, I don't fucking know. Like, that's what you're supposed to tell me or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, go fucking sweep the stairs or some shit, and that'll help you find it.
yeah.
And they come back, like, I still haven't found it or whatever. And he's like, okay. But then they always challenge you. Basically, again, coming back, Alan Watts is one of my favorite philosophers because he's like, why do you have the need to improve yourself? You know what I mean? If you are naturally who you are and a natural being,
Yeah.
then there's not a place to reach. You know what I mean? It's like if you fully accept who you are in this void of of everything or whatever. But basically the point of the Buddha thing that I want to wrap up, of course, but basically the point where you understand that the Buddha is putting you on tasks that aren't really helping that much, and understanding that you will always be on a place of like not peace of mind or whatever, then you can kind of accept that and let go. You know what I mean? It's one of those truths that's what I was, kind of relating it to. It's like kind of a truth that maybe doesn't feel satisfying, but in the end you just kind of have to accept it.
Have to
and then once you accept it, that's where actual enlightenment like comes from,
Yeah. That's the hardest part to explain to people. Is like what accepting it means.
Yeah.
Impossible to explain.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just one day you're chill with it. And I don't know how else to say it other than that.
Yeah.
Like it's just, and I don't know how to tell someone to do it. It just is.
Yeah, well, that's like the weird part. You like hear all these like, I mean, even like hippie culture and like stuff from like the 60s are like, dude, we're just all happening, man. And you're just like, dude, you're so right, though. You know what I mean? It's like, I didn't like, you think it's funny like while you're growing up, and then you're just like, damn, we are just happening, huh? That's crazy.
Yeah.
It just is. And you're like, is what? And you're just like, it just is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that's why everyone kind of needs to have like some kind of existential breakdown at some point,
right?
And so that they can get there,
right?
I think it's the only way. If you feel kind of fine, you're fucked.
Yeah,
you're always going to be wanting something.
Yeah, until you try to pursue whatever.
Yeah,
not what you're wanting, but the feeling of wanting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that like idea of meaning,
right? The idea of purpose and. But it's so innate, which kind of fucking sucks.
It's so innate.
Yeah.
But you can, I feel like there's like a way to repurpose it. Like, because it's something, the thing I think about, like the extension that I would add to, like, I think, therefore I am, is like, I feel, therefore there's feeling.
I feel, therefore there's feeling. Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense.
And I can't go beyond that, but that's like the only valid thing. So I had such a bad like mental health, like up until my mid-20s.
Yeah.
And I kind of
agree too. I was in that same place. Yeah.
And that's when I started to internalize those things. And that's when I started to get to be like, all there is just like the shit that you feel. And I started to be like, dude, just sitting on the couch and playing video games and getting Grubhub rules.
Yeah. That's so true.
Like, just like basic human, like good feelings.
Yeah, pleasure.
Are so nice.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like part of, I don't know.
Enjoying. I mean, it's part of like maturing and like kind of understanding that concept that enjoy the small things, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like not always wanting more and more and
Yeah.
being unsatisfied with everything you have.
Yeah. And honestly, as I get further away from that point in my life,
Yeah.
and my mental health, I'm starting to coast and not think about my mental health and not think about philosophy as much.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get to a place again where I'm like, and that's part of the thing with comedy is like I have to make something.
Right.
Like what if I don't ever do anything, like I don't make something cool or like do this or do that, and then me a few years ago is kind of like, dude, just who cares? It doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything. Just chill, like enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I think I had this experience as well where like my mental health started to increase. And then I just was like happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
just like there. And I talked about this with Josh Martir a little bit as well. But
Idiot.
fucking
Dumbass.
I hate that guy, dude. He sucks. But basically it's like when I was happy, it's like I just didn't think about things as deeply, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so in a sense it felt like a loss of like,
Yeah.
damn, like I'm not as deep, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the idea, I feel like when I felt those feelings, I wanted to put them into a creation. And now it's like now I want to create, but I'm not drawing from those feelings anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is tough.
Yeah.
Luckily, I have the answer. No.
I know, profound truth. Josh does not have the answer. No, I think the answer is balance. I mean, that's everything that I always come back to in general for life is like whatever thing you're grappling with or struggling with is balance. So
Yeah.
if you feel that if you can just be happy and be happy, but if you feel that you're happy and you're not as deep, then have a balance of, sadness and understanding what sadness is and feel that maybe you feel deeper. But feeling is you feel because you feel, you know?
You feel because you feel.
Yeah. There's this, I've been watching the Larry Sanders Show, and they have this thing about talk show hosts where they're like, the longer you're on, the longer you're on.
Oh, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I've just been trying to put that into like every philosophy
Yeah.
I've ever experienced.
Honestly,
before.
it does just work.
Yeah. What as also I wanted to say about how you had like gotten that philosophy kind of from your book, The Magicians.
No, I think it was a more retrofitting
Oh, okay.
thing where I kind of realized that I already thought that.
Oh, and that kind of just fit.
And it kind of was like, oh, this is like, it's kind of like I was saying, like I was watching my behavior before,
Yeah.
and this like little like fantasy style analogy for it kind of was like clicked in my head, and I was like, oh shit,
Yeah.
that's what I think.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I went through this big self exploration period of like what like what's the root of all this shit that I'm doing, and like what do I really think, and how do I feel about my place in the world, and I had to like realize that I was already doing all that stuff.
Right.
I already believed it. I just didn't know what I
Yeah.
was. you know?
Right. Yeah, I agree. But the only reason I brought that up is because as I get older, I realize how many of my philosophies are just based on television and
Yeah.
things that I've seen.
Yeah.
Like I saw Looper, and in it, they're like, he wants to learn like French and like move to France.
Yeah.
And then his future self comes back and he's like, nah, man, move to Japan, learn Japanese. Like that's
Yeah.
where like the world's headed. And so in my eyes, I'm like, that makes sense. And I just like, I've been like, yeah, Japan's going to take over. It's going to be fine. You know what I mean? Same way with like Adventure Time. There's this part where rainicorns eat humans when they existed, and Jake the dog starts dating a rainicorn, and obviously he's roommates with a human, and they come in and they're like, oh, there's a whole thing, but they love humans. In the end, they eat like vegan human, and Finn's like, I taste delicious. So I always think humans would taste delicious. You know what I mean? That's just that's just something that I carry around with me based off of a fake show.
As a show that I've never seen before, you're like, it's obvious he lives with a human.
He lives with a human,
Clearly.
yeah.
In this vegan human flesh scenario, obviously he lives with a human.
You just don't get it, dude. You just don't.
No, dude. I mean, you are just like a collection of your experiences. So I actually could probably be wrong. I bet a lot of what I think is probably just from like TV and movies.
Yeah.
It's like, where else are you getting it
True.
from?
Or our parents.
Or our parents, yeah.
Yeah. Another profound truth that just lets you down. But we don't have to get into that. If you want to get into personal relationships and letdowns, just listen to the Josh Martir episode and how sad his family life.
Did he bring me up?
No, not you, but he brought up his parents and how that whole thing affected him as a person, which was really enticing, actually. I was a big fan of that. I unzipped him. You know what I mean? Yeah, big fan of unzipping people. But anyways, I think that's probably a good place to wrap up if you're good. Josh Kleckner, follow him on Instagram at Josh ___. Kleckner. Is that accurate?
No, it's Josh Kleckner comedy, no underscore.
I just wish everybody's name was just their name underscore their name.
No, it's just Josh Kleckner comedy, no underscores, no things.
Okay, cool. You got shows coming up or anything?
I'm hosting the Sunday Next in Line show, the weekly.
Oh, the weekly. Oh, so you're doing it every Sunday?
Yeah, it's like a open mic ish thing.
But like the next level.
It's the next level above open mic. But yeah, I'm doing that.
Okay. Yeah, if you just
other
you have a podcast that you. Oh no, you don't want. You want to keep your podcast.
I don't talk
wraps.
about. Actually, I haven't done my podcast in a while.
Oh well, then it's probably good. You fucking keep it shut, dude.
Yeah, dude. Shows come up. Second round Phillies Funniest.
Oh yeah, when's that?
August 2nd.
August 2nd. That's a good one to promote.
Gonna come in last, probably. I think.
You know.
Usually, I don't announce last place.
Yeah.
But I think I'll make an exception for me.
Like Josh Kleckner, he fucking was the worst one here. Just by the way.
These are the top 3. Everyone else somewhere, and then Josh Kleckner is not allowed in
and
the
we're
Helium
gonna take
anymore.
a sad picture of him looking sad and post it on the Helium Comedy Instagram. All right, dude. Well, I think this is a good, successful conversation. I appreciate you coming out.
Yeah.
Give you a little mic bump, and then we'll wrap it up.
Oh.